We promised you that we'd be dipping into the briefing that is currently taking place. It's already started, and this is where Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, the Minister of Electricity and Energy, is updating us on the Eskom's prepaid metering key revision numbers. So let's go there and take a listen.
They would have converted on the 24th or not, they would not have been affected by this conversion, because after all, they are bypassing, if you like, the legal platform. And these are the people to whom we have communicated that it is our intention that from now until the 13th of December present themselves so that we can regularize them. And then there's things around the temper fines, essentially an admission of guilt that, look, I've not been consuming legally, and we do accept that it's an onerous obligation of about 6,000 rands, and then that gets to be split over a period of 12 months, and people pay, the customer pays 500 rands per month to cushion, if you like, the blow over a period of 12 months. Remember, in some instances, this particular instance, and this is not an isolated instance, when I was engaging with some of the people on the queue, they make the point that the last time they've bought electricity was in 2018. So essentially, people have been consuming for free since 2018. And I'll come to the significance of that credit control going into the future. So the first point to be made is that this exercise that we've been doing is not a credit control instrument. The credit control will come in the normal course of events, but I think what Eskom will do is the intensification of that exercise. So the second category of people who are not in the first instance meant to have been there on the queue are people who have been bypassing, because they could come even after the 24th. You regularize them, an admission that in fact I've been tampering, and then we effect what is in fact the general rule in Eskom, in lieu of you not having used a legal platform in admission, and there's that what we call the temper fines. And then the third category of people is people who never had the meters in the first place. So they found an ingenious way. So again, another form of illegal connection, of course, a bit more sophisticated, and with working with at least on inspection, people who understand electricity, certified people are able to consume electricity illegally. So that's the third category of people. These are some of the people who are on the queue. So those are not the people who have been, you are not on this platform that we are converting, this conversion platform. So in the first instance, you are not there, you are not affected. And that's why we are communicating with people on the queue. It's fine, you go home, we will come and address that situation beyond the 24th, so that we have a better appreciation of the scale of the work that needs to be done, so don't conflate the process of those who have done the right thing over time and were experiencing technical glitches, and we needed to address that category of people. And then there's a fourth category of people that were on the queue. That fourth category of people on the queue is people who are using conventional meters. So essentially, these are people who are not on prepaid. So what we're dealing with is not people who are using conventional meters. We're dealing with people who were on prepaid. So in the first place, these people were not meant to have been on the queue. They'll come through the process of conversion going into the future. And then the last category of people who were on the queue are people whose meters were banned, meters that are faulty, have not been functioning, but they continue to consume, and the only assumption you make is that they found an ingenious way of accessing the grid, and essentially they fall into, if you like, it's a subcategory of people who are bypassing the platform. So you have been bypassing the platform. We're dealing with people who are legally on the platform. So those people were not supposed to have been on the queue, so we deal with them differently. So this window that we have created of until the 13th of December now it's a credit control window. So what do I mean by credit control window? You come present yourself, you get to be regularized, and then the ESCOM will use its own judgment, temper fine once they get to understand the reasons why you had taken the route that you had taken, and the maximum temper fine is at 6,000, like I said, spread over a period of 12 months. And then you'll have in that category of people who will be attended to in that period, people who don't have meters at all, people who's been bypassing meters, and the need now is for us to do a replacement of those meters. Then ESCOM will do a replacement of those meters, and that of course also comes at the cost of replacement, and Mr. Bala will speak to that. So the emphasis I'm making really is the following, is that communication has been happening. 4.9 million people heeded that communication, presented themselves as they were buying the tokens. The conversion was happening seamlessly, and then there was that 2.1 million people left out because of the reasons that I've mentioned, and then we called on those in the 2.1 million who had genuine technical glitches, not necessarily bypassing, not necessarily not having a meter on without or those on a conventional platform. Those are not the people who were supposed to have been in the queue in the first instance, or affected by the cutoff of the 24th of November. And now we're dealing with that bigger group, and that now we know it's about it's 1.7 million people that we are dealing with. So this thing has got significant ramifications. Before I give Mr. Bala, so we have done the issues of the transitioning to KRN and to the key revision number 2, so that you are on the latest new generation platform. What are the implications of these 2.1 million people, and now is reduced to 1.7 million people, or rather customers? First is that we know that an average household in a low-income area, and I'm using that as a floor, really, as a base, consume on average 1,200 rands of electricity per month. So if you take 2.1 million people who have not been paying that 1,200 rands per month, ESCOM alone, so remember I'm not accounting for municipalities, because municipalities will have their own process. ESCOM alone has been losing per month 2.5 billion rands. If you have to compute that over a period of a year, ESCOM is losing 30 billion rands on this category of people that I'm referring to. So now that the number has gone to 1.7 million people, if they don't get to present themselves, ESCOM will be losing about 2 billion rands per month, and that number will go of course to 24 billion rands per annum. So I'm talking about people, direct customers to ESCOM. And we know, I've mentioned before, that municipalities collectively are owed, the last time we did the number, this was around July of this year, municipalities collectively are owed 340 billion rands. And we know that the municipal system is not as robust as the ESCOM one. So one can make a safe assumption that in fact the losses of municipalities is double that of ESCOM. So if we work on that, so municipalities could be losing up to 60 billion rands per annum as a result of a category of people who just choose not to pay. And of course, in that category, in those people who are not paying, there are people who genuinely have got reasons as a result of the economic situation, as a result of incomes that have discontinued as a result of the performance of the economy. There's a dispensation that has been created at the municipal level, and that dispensation is to ensure that they register in the indigent register and they get free basic electricity. So I'm separating those who genuinely are deserving of being in that category of indigent from those who just choose not to pay and prioritize, if you like, other spending priorities outside ESCOM and municipalities, and that is landing us where we at. And that's why this window that we are creating going forward until the 13th is important that Eskom is aggressive. And of course, when I say aggressive, the rollout of those meters for those who have been bypassing, those who have not had meters, those who have presented themselves, so that we put a process in motion for us to be able to roll out these meters and recover what is owed to Eskom, and the same to municipalities. I'm making this point because if we allow this situation to continue, it means that Eskom will not be in a position to fulfill its obligations. We know now, as I sit before you, that the municipalities are finding it difficult to fulfill their obligations. They can't pay their bulk accounts to Eskom, to the various water boards, as a result of people who choose not to pay. And remember, I'm separating those who choose not to pay from the indigent. Those are two separate conversations. But there are those who choose not to pay, placing municipality under serious strain. They are unable to discharge and prosecute their constitutional obligations, and hence we see the collapse of infrastructure is as a result of, amongst others, and I'm not suggesting that this is the only reason, but the fact that there's been a gradual erosion of the revenue streams, the income of municipalities. It leads to the situation that is confronting us. And in return, municipalities now are owing Eskom as bulk customers. I shared with you the last time, 90 billion rands. On the one hand, and Eskom from its own customers, I did say to you earlier on, if we work on the number of the 2.1 million people, has been losing about 2.5 billion rands per month, and that amounts to 30 billion rands per annum, just on their customers, direct customers, and then there's bulk customers in municipalities, 90 billion. When you put together that number, it's a staggering 120 billion rands. And that number then will then find itself in the tariff application, because part of the computation of the tariff is to ensure that you recover. If you are unable to recover, then you must find ways of financing, if you like, that delta, that difference, and then gets to be expressed in one way or the other in the tariff formula. So what is the point I'm making? The point I'm making is that the real victims of those who choose not to pay, and I'm not talking about the indigent, the real victims of those who choose not to pay is the paying customer. Because the paying customer is going to pay double. You are going to pay your own consumption, for your own consumption, and then in the tariff structure, Eskom would have built in its inability to collect, and you pay for those who choose not to pay. And when I'm listening at the alarm, I'm saying the conversations are skewed. So first, to acknowledge that there's 4.9 million people in this exercise who have chosen to subject themselves to this exercise. So it's now a diligent customer, I'm going to go and buy my tokens. And I've shared to you that anyone who have seen that in this window, there are people who had not bought, going back, at least on this account that I've been sharing with you, 2018, I have not bought electricity, but I've been consuming. In this window, in the past 6 months, if you had gone and bought a token, you would have been converted. They would not have been on the queue. So there has to be that conversation about those who just refuse not to pay. And then we'll shield, protect, and ensure that we provide for the indigent. The dispensation is there. I think one of the things that we've picked up out of this exercise is the fact that municipalities, and of course including Eskom, there is no robust dispensation of ensuring that we are able to extend this benefit of free basic electricity to an ordinary customer. What this exercise will do, amongst others, as a benefit of rolling out these meters, is to ensure that we subsidize the customer directly. So what has been the case hitherto is that the National Treasury provides a free basic allocation in the form of a grant. That grant flows through the municipality, so it gets to municipality, it lands at the municipality. What we know is that municipalities are not passing it on because they've got other spending pressures as a result of those who are not paying, and then they get to pay salaries and do other things other than what the grant is meant for. So with a platform of a prepaid, what we'll be introducing in the electricity policies to ensure that there's a direct, if you like, subsidy. So using these smart meters, you are able to preload the person every month so that the benefit goes to the consumer directly, does not go through a third person. So I thought that as I give you an update of the fact that 400,000 people have come through now, so what this means is that Eskom will have the benefit of having 400,000 people buying now. So Eskom per month, if they continue to buy diligently, Eskom will receive a minimum of close to 440 million rands per month from those who had previously not been paying and now they are paying. And therefore that will go into the kitty of helping us to ensure that we secure the grid. We are able to refurbish, replenish, if you like, the distribution infrastructure, and we don't get to a situation where people are experiencing load reduction. And then the last point to make is that we have now confirmed there's a relationship between the concentration of people who have not been paying and load reduction. And the point that we've been making before. So these are people who had overloaded the system, people who have connected illegally. Now people are coming out. Then we get to know those areas that have been experiencing load reduction is where we have been inundated with people coming to the queues and saying, look, we have not been paying. And what that reveals really is that in those suburbs, those locations, there are people who have been diligently paying, but they are subjected to load reduction because the technical nature of how electricity is reticulated is that it's a shared infrastructure. So if there's a load reduction in one area and one point, it also affects those that have been paying. So it doesn't discriminate really. And that's the downside of this. But we hope that through this exercise, we will be in a position to prevail and just ensure that people are able to pay their dues. And those that are not in a position to, we have a dispensation in the state to help them to do exactly that. So that's the update, but I will invite Mr. Bala to also just share with you some of the observations, deeper observations that are more technical before we take questions. Thanks.
All right, great to see and listen to what the Minister has to say, and very important information given there. Eskom are now going to also talk a little bit more technical. We're not going to take that part live. We will, of course, bring you reports on that. If we have a moment, we might cross into some of the questions if we've got time.